Welcome in, everyone. This is Heather Hawkins, the grants manager for the South Carolina American Revolution Sester Centennial Commission. And if you're listening in today, you are probably one of our grantees. We say congratulations. Yes, there will be fireworks on July 4th, and I hope you're celebrating that you are a new grantee. Once we have a signed grant agreement and have a state vendor number, paperwork will be submitted to the South Carolina Department of Archives and History, we're under their umbrella for that first payment. But let's talk about what it means to be spending the people's money. We want to respect it as much as possible. So there's certain things we want to follow as a new grantee with SC 250. And one of them is get ready for reports. Reports and deadlines. Usually I have November 15th, February 15th, and May 15th as my deadlines. And it depends on when you were awarded of when those reports will be due. You will have at least one status report, if not multiples, depending on how long your grant is for. And these status reports are a little briefer, but they get you ready for that final report. And we must have something in the file for the end of the fiscal year, which ends on June 30th, which is why I almost always have your report due on May the 15th. We also do what we call site visits, quote unquote. These don't necessarily mean that we come in person to do these. These are done by the staffer, and the staffer will set up the time for either a phone call, a Zoom call, or to come in person based on what type of grant you have. And this will also be based on your award date, what date we set these up for. You'll probably get alerts about these, but again, it's on our staffers here to set up your site visits. The final report is very important. This is how you'll get your last 20% of your grant amount. It'll be a reimbursement after you have completed this final report, which includes financial receipts, proof of deliverables, marketing, measurements of success, and much more. We're going to go through examples of both the status report and the final report today. And again, that final report deadline is based on your award date and when in your timeline that you set out in your application you said you thought you would be completed. Now, I also want to walk you through where to find these. These are in the grant web grants. Yes, you do have to complete these in web grants as we did the application. Under your component in your grants, you'll find status reports. And again, we're going to walk through examples of that. To prepare for these reports, you're going to be saving those receipts, including documentation of your matching funds. So if you are required to have a match, you must also document that with receipts and proof of payment. So a credit card receipt has both on it, but if you have an invoice, you need to not just have it marked paid, we need to actually see the check or the ACH or some kind of proof that that credit card was paid through credit card or that invoice was paid in some manner. Document of deliverables. So we were very specific about those deliverables in the application and particularly in that contract. And I'm going to say read your contract. That section B is very important and it gives you that 1, 2, 3, 4. What are those deliverables that we said we're going to have at the end of the day? In order to get your last 20% of your grant, you're going to have to prove that you have accomplished those deliverables. So be thinking about how you're going to document that in the final report. Also, some of you may be asked to do a how-to template so that others can replicate your grant process, your project process, I should say, across the state. So if it is a deliverable to have a template requirement, it will be in your contract. Read your contract, I say once again. Also, make sure you're taking photos along the way, not only of an event, but of the process. We'll talk a little bit about how you can promote the process to your history lovers out there. They love that kind of stuff as you go through the process of doing a project. Save those tear sheets, is what they used to call them for advertising, both digital and scanned. And if you have a third party, don't forget we're going to be saving receipts for third party um, buyers. That means if you have an ad agency and they're buying something for you, you have to prove that they paid those bills as well. Measurement of success. So also in your contract, read your contract. We remind you that in there you spelled out how we're going to say this was successful or not. So be keeping track of demographics. If you have age, that's fantastic, or just number of people involved. Again, this could be the people involved with the process, not necessarily showing up for an event if your grant is not for an event. Gather your social media interaction, take screenshots, get your Google Analytics for your websites. Those kind of things are great for those measurements of success. And again, they should be numbered out for you in your contract. So please check it out. Making changes. So sometimes we anticipate will be done a little earlier and we need an extension, or maybe we got a quote, but now it's a little different once you start doing the actual project, and we need to move some things around in our budget, or even our scope of work might change slightly. And this does have to be pre-approved by SC 250 before any action is taken to make those changes. Usually it's not a problem, but I remind you, it does need to be pre-approved. So make sure that you give us a call, talk to us if you have changes you want to make. Submit a contract amendment in our system. We're going to walk through that again today. And reach out prior to report deadlines. If you need a contract extension, particularly, please be thinking about that in advance. And I want to remind you that if you do ask for a contract extension, you do still have to do a semi-annual report, even if you're extending your final report to later on. All right, let's talk a little bit about funding and basic fiscal guidance. We have a page that will talk a little bit about that um, in our system. Procurement is followed by based on who your fiscal agent is. So your fiscal agent, if they are the county, you'll follow the county's procurement rules. If your fiscal agent is a nonprofit and they don't have a formal procurement policy, we do encourage you to take on the state's procurement policy. And I have some information, some basic information about that on our website. We'll check it out shortly. And also, how do we distribute this? To get that last 20% of the money back, you're going to be given 80% up front. The only exception to this is if it's an organizing grant and you're a city or county, then I can give you 100% up front. Everybody else, it's going to be 80% for all grants up front. 20% will be reimbursed at the completion of final paperwork. Now, keep in mind, I said reimbursed, so you do have to come up with this cash flow that will work. So make sure you're either fundraising on that, you have a partner who can help, who can cash flow that 20%. And then we'll reimburse that once we have approved that final report. So keep that in mind in your procedures. Now, if for some reason you would not be able to finish the project without getting that last 20%, we'll need to have a conversation about that and documenting that you've already gotten everything in place to finish that final report. So let's do a little demo. I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint and I'm going to share with you guys my home screen. And here is our website as it is this recording. We will be making some changes to this in the next couple of months, but we'll always have a grants way to get to the grants information. So right now we have this grants tab at southcarolina250.com. We have SC250 grants, and there's lots of cool stuff on here. Once we finalize this webinar, it will be recorded and posted, or linked of it will be posted here on our webinars page. Hopefully you signed up for your webinar today through that page. You also have applicants support and consultations. This can also be consultations for doing your reports. So you can sign up for those. Tuesdays and Thursdays primarily are the time slots I have open. And then previous grant awards are listed here. We're going to be updating a lot of that soon. And the grant recipient guidance. This is your page right here. We're going to go through this real quickly. So you know about getting your contract signed, and here's a step-by-step on signing that grant agreement. And this is the grantee briefing that we're doing right now. So good for you. You're doing what you're supposed to do with your grant briefing. This talks about the distribution, the 80% upfront, 20% reimbursement. Here's our fiscal guidance. So if you don't have a procurement policy, these are the basics of state procurement. Anything that is under $10,000 or up to $10,000, you just need an invoice and proof of payment. 10,000 to 25,000, we're looking for three written quotes. They do have to be responsive quotes. And then 25 and up, we're going to have to put everything through the business opportunity ads in the state system. So keep that in mind, and I can help you with that if you need to do that. But again, if your fiscal agent has a different procurement policy, you just follow what they have and make sure you're documenting it in case there is anything that comes up in a future audit. Because once you are a grantee, you could potentially be audited for your grant money at any point down in the next 3 years, I believe it is. So just keep that in mind and keep those receipts and documentations for at least 3 years. All right, matching funds. So most of our grants on the lower end do not require it. That's the monthly grants, and our organizing grants do not require a match, but major grants do require at least a 20% match. Premier project grants require at least a 25% match. Please keep in mind this is not in kind, and we do need to be documenting this as we go through the process. And here's where we talk a little bit about citation. This is how you acknowledge that SC 250 helped to pay for your project. You can do it verbally if it's at an event. Please make sure you recognize any commissioners who might attend. In print, we have high-res logos also available for you here that you can download. And we encourage you to look at the um, basics, the marketing basics, the graphic standards that they have. You can click here to review those. I have a photo release, both for an organization that might be releasing something to you, or an 18 older photo release, or a minor photo release. Please be careful with our students. We want to be respectful of them and protective of them. So make sure you're getting photo releases for anything that you're going to share with those photos and include those with your reports, those photo releases. Sample press release is right here for those who want to send out a press release. We do encourage this to send out a press release when you get the grant and for any of your events, or even if it's the end of a project. You want a completion of the project, you want to send out a press release and get some more attention to what you're doing there in your community. And then here's the status report. So I've given you some basic dates, but these do vary, again, based on when you were set up with your award. So keep that in mind. You can always go to your status reports, and pro tip is check it out. I try to add these in for you manually so that you have them already in the system. So please try to keep that in mind, and we're going to walk through that in just a second. Right here is a brand new updated step-by-step for completing a status report, and the step-by-step for completing the final report is right there. If you need to do a contract amendment, you can download a step-by-step here. And of course, you can always get in touch with me if you need any assistance. So this is your page here with lots of great information on it. Grant recipient guidance. It's under the SC 250 grants tab on southcarolina250.com. Now, we're going to go to our second tab here, and that is going to be a tab that takes us to Discover South Carolina's web grants. Now, this is, of course, where we do all of our work for our grants. I'm going to sign in as my external user here so that I have a view that looks similar to yours. Now, you're going to have a work assignment, and a lot of times your final reports, your status reports will show up there, but you can also just go down to your grant and find the grant that you're working on. Obviously, I work with a lot of folks and I do a lot of demos. So I'm going to go to this American Revolution Baxley County play. And there are a couple things here. I want to go look at my contract first. So the second component under this is contract. And anytime you hover over something in Web Grants and you click on it, it will go ahead and open up, and you can take a look and look at the different components. In section B, you're going to be finding right here the expected outcome. This these are your deliverables right here. A completed play. We're going to look at peer review, a mini exhibit, web pages. Those are, in this example, those are the deliverables for this grant. And if you look a little bit further down in section B, success will be measured. So attendance, media coverage, social media interaction, participation from the community, clicks on the website, feedback from participants. So these are what I'm going to be held to when I go to do my final report for this grant that we're talking about here. And yes, Alexander Hamilton is the fiscal agent for this grant. I couldn't resist. Okay, so we've taken a look at our contract, refreshed our memory. We're going to go to our status reports. Now, as you see here, I have gone ahead and put these in here. So I don't need to add a new one. I can simply click on the one that I want to work on. One I've already submitted, and maybe let's say it's next May, and I want to go ahead and do my May report. Or maybe it is November, and I want to add an extra report for November. So I'm going to show you how to add a status report. So we're going to go and click on that there. For just a regular status report, I'm going to do a semi-annual report, but if you want to do a final report, you can go down to that. I'm going to go to semi-annual report. And because I'm going to give this a name, I'm going to call it my November 2024 status report. Now, the report dates are going to take you from the date that you get the award letter. We're going to say that this is a August submission, and we get the award letter on September 2nd. And then we're going to take this report all the way up through November 15th. So we're going to save this form. So this, just like your application, you're going to have sections. You have your general information, which we just completed. And we're going to go down to our status report. Note this is version 2. It's slightly different than what you may have seen in the past if you're already a current grantee. Let's take a look at some of these differences here. So we want to get you prepared for that final report. So the first thing you want to do is say, have you reviewed the deliverables listed in your contract? Are you documenting those deliverables and the process as you produce them? I'm going to say yes. Have you reviewed the measurement success listed in your contract? We just did that. Have you been collecting documentation as you go along? Are you collecting demographics from participation? I'm going to say yes. Now, this one is not required because sometimes you don't have objects in your deliverables that meet this criteria, but this is very important. Everything that is interpretation or that requires some history overview, even design, we really prefer that you have SC 250 approve it before production. Make sure you are leaving time for that in your production. As you go for your timeline, you're leaving time to send it to us and we get it peer reviewed before you can go forward with it. So I've done that in my process. I got my play. I've submitted it to be reviewed, so I'm going to say yes there. I'm taking pictures as we start working as putting together our production team for our play, and I'm collecting proof of publicity. We just did a press release about the grant. I'm going to say yes, so I'm collecting that. My timeline, we were a little bit behind, but I'm going to say we've kind of caught up. So I'm going to say yes here. I'm collecting receipts as we go and we're collecting that proof of payment. So when the check's written, I'm making a copy of that check so that I have that for the record. So you don't have to go back and find it at the end. Now we've got our grant, it's got over $9,000 in it, but we're going to say we've spent around 3,500 of it so far. And we are not going to have to ask for a contract amendment. Actually, let's say yes, we're going to ask for a contract amendment, and we'll go do that in a minute. And now let's answer our 3 questions that are narratives. So these are, where are we in the scope of work? So this is my pretend status report about my play. So I'm going to say that script has been completed and submitted to SC 250 for peer review. Auditions have been scheduled. Publicity team has put together a marketing plan and they've begun awareness campaign. All right. So that's where we are in our scope of work. So have we had successes from the project so far? We'll say great response on social media awareness campaign. Interaction is up 20%. We'll say that uh, participation from community has been um, advanced or greater than usual. There we go. I can type now. And then we're last questions. Were there any challenges or successes, that other successes did you want to brag about? And we're going to say challenge wise, time play took longer than expected to complete, but we feel we are still on schedule to open as predicted. Okay. And then we're going to say that the royalties for the music was more expensive than believed, and we will be submitting a contract amendment to change distribution of funding. So we can't give you more money than what you were awarded, but we can shift around what that money is going to. And that means shift around from different categories. And we'll get into that in a little more detail in just a second. So we're going to save this. You'll see I've answered all my questions at the top. I've answered my handwritten ones, or my narrative ones, I should say. If I want to add an attachment, I would click on my add a new attachment, and you do have to save the form in order to have access to any kind of paperclip section of your application or status report. So if you click on add new attachment, then you would select a file. It allows you to browse, and I could attach that screenshot just to give you an example. I do have to give it a description, save the file. It will now show up as attached at the bottom, and you can open that up. I'm going to mark this status report as complete and submit the status report. So we're going to confirm the submit. Now, once I have confirmed it here in red, then we are not able to make any changes. Before that, you can make changes to your status report. As I click on status reports, you'll see that we now have a November status report as submitted. We're going to look real quickly at the final report, since many of you will be getting to that pretty soon. So let's edit our status report. This is one that's already there, so I didn't have to do general information. That was already set up for me. So I just had to hit edit and go down and select the component that I'm on. There are 3 components to the final report in addition to the general information. We're going to start with our narrative, and we have to edit our form. And you'll note that it pulls up for you so that you already have your summary and how it relates to the American Revolution. This is pulled directly from your application. It pulled through, so we don't necessarily have to go traipsing back to look at our contract. It's pulled through our measurement of success and our looking at our deliverables. So those 2 pieces are here. And now we can answer these questions. Have I met everything in my deliverables? And I can say yes or no here and talk about what we got accomplished. And then this next one, were you asked to do a template so that others could do it? and advice for other grantees with similar projects. So again, you're seeing how the status report gets you prepared to have all your answers for this final report. Again, measurement of success, I can scroll up here and say, attendance at the event. I can do 1, we had so many people at the event. 2 was media coverage. See attached tear sheets from the local paper, and coverage was also on the local radio. So we can talk about that. And here's more of the publicity promotion section. You can talk about how you handled publicity. This pulled through from your application. So you can say, did I meet my benchmarks? Did I hold my auditions in November? Did I get the play written by October? We'll say the play wasn't done until November, but we got back on schedule, or whatever we need to say here. So that's those are your benchmarks. Here's where we show what public was served. Again, we're dealing with public funds. We need to show how the public was able to utilize it. And here you can do by age, or there is an age unknown that you can put right here. So if we had 900 people show up for the 3 days of the play, you would put 900 there. Here's where you put any other information you want us to know about your project. Other demographics you can also include there. Now there's several attachment forms, but I've got to save my form in order to get to those sections. It always takes you to the top when it saves. We're going to scroll down, and now every time we see a paper clip, we can attach something. So we have deliverables here. This is all your deliverables. So I might attach for the play, it would probably be the program for the play, pictures of the play, even a link to a video of the play would go in there under marking those deliverables. Everything that's back under 1, 2, 3, 4, everything here I wanted to be documenting here on and attaching here. We'll go down a little further. This where I might attach any kind of ads, even some screenshots from Facebook ads, anything that you want to put publicity-wise, flyers, posters, you could attach there under publicity. And then I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom, any additional attachments I want to attach here. Now, what I want to remind you that receipts do not go on the narrative section. So receipts are going to come in just a minute. Thank you for holding on to them and keeping them and being ready for the final report, but they're going to go on the last section. Just as with our application, once we complete each section, we mark it as complete. So I haven't finished this one, but once I did, I would mark this as complete. The next section, and I'll have you note that these are tabs, so you can go between the sections here as well. And I'm going to show you, we're going to edit expenses. Now this is a little confusing because it's set up for where you would get reimbursed for most programs in the system. And since we're using the same as other grant programs, that's the way it's set up. But just keep in mind that this column here, expenses, this period means all of your expenses because that's the way we do it. So this is your total expenses. We would put that we spent 600 and or let's say $6,500 under supplies and materials, and we spent 200 and let's see, 2,400. Let's see here, 15 here, and we paid our own. We had some additional under equipment. We spent an additional $900 under equipment. So now we see that we've actually overspent here. So let me go back and delete some of that. Let's do, we get rid of a $600 somewhere. Let's see. So we're going to do 900 here and 600 over here. Because what you're going to want to do is have these two numbers match here. And you, because I didn't have more of it than a 10% change, I had a little change, but not a more than 10% between sections. So it allowed me to go ahead. Now, if you come across where it will not let you put in a number, it's more than likely because you've exceeded that 10% change between sections. So please keep that in mind. And over here, you see that we had an additional amount of money, $1,500 that you spent on the project. So you're either proving your match or you are adding addition, you're showing that you had an additional match that you didn't even maybe have in your original application. We're going to go to our last section, and this is the receipts. So there's a separate finance section to attach all your receipts and again, proof of payment. You also attach all of your match proof of payment and receipts here as well. I need a total of, if it's $1,500 match and it is $8,000 grant, then I need $9,500 worth of receipts and proof of payment. So do that for me and we can make the rest of the paperwork work. So help me with by putting up all your receipts here. It's great if you can do them in separate uploads, but if not, that's fine as well. Now, these are tabs here, and it only shows 6 letters. So this is your general section, your narrative, your expenses, and your finance. But this report list takes you back to this list here. Once you mark each section as complete, it will show up as a check mark here. This will turn green, and you will get a submit button here. Again, you submit, it has a pop-up. When you hit the red submit, you can no longer make any changes. So that would be how you would do a final report. Now, the final thing I do want to mention while we're in here, if you come down a few more components, you will see our contract amendment. So we're going to quickly click on that. I'm going to add an amendment. Now, what type of amendment is this? Is it a budget revision? So you're changing from one section to another. Again, don't worry about differences in line items as long as you're not changing more than 10% between sections. Then we have a project revision. So maybe you're changing a little bit of your deliverables or you've had to tweak them a little bit and you want to talk about that. Again, this is a request to our executive director. And often she approves them, mostly she approves them, but maybe you just need a contract extension. We're going to say contract extension, and we're going to say extension to let's do February 2026. There we go. And then we're going to say save. All right, I'm going to click the next one, and then you just have one little blank where you have to make your argument. So we're going to say maybe the play was so successful, a second production will be second production will occur in early February 2026. We would like an extension to include those productions, those performances in the grant. I mean, there you go. And save your form, mark it as complete, submit your amendment, and hit submit. So we've talked a little bit about how to look at your contract, how to do both your semi-annual reports, those status reports, and your final report. And we've looked at your contract amendments all under your grant here in the Web Grants program. Now we're going to switch back over to our PowerPoint briefly. And thank you everybody for holding on to your questions. We want to go ahead and take a look at those after we finish this last little section. We will allow for questions, so get those ready. So now we're back to our PowerPoint. We've done our demo. And I just want to remind you that you can copy an existing application if you want to work on another one. So don't ever just start from scratch again. Make sure you're copying an existing application. But again, I do ask you that if you do that, you double check the title, you double check all of your financial statements, make sure they're the right year. If you've changed from one fiscal year to another between your applications, please make sure you're looking at that. And here are the deadlines for this fiscal year. We're going to do our monthly grants, which are up to $15,000. Those will be every first of the month, depending on the first business day of the month. August the 1st is the first one, and we go all the way through June the 2nd of 2025 for this fiscal year. And then major grants, which are $15,001 request up to $125,000. Those are reviewed quarterly, as are the Premier Project grants, which are $125,001 up. And the first deadline will be September 26th, then December 13th, that's March 26th, and then we'll have June 26th of 2025. Those will be our 4 quarters of our Premier Project and Major Grant deadlines. Leave plenty of room in those for the review process, since it does have to go before a quarterly report, a quarterly, commission meeting. And also remember, there are lots of other places out there that are doing grants. American Battlefield Trust does, they do some field trip grants. So keep that in mind. That's one of our partners, of course, working with the Liberty Trail. The National Park Service, semi-quincentennial grants. If you have part of your organization or in your community a location that's American Revolution related, and they have a much broader vision of what that time period is. So please take a look at that. And if you have something that is on the National Register, or if it is something that is eligible for the National Register, and you can talk to Virginia Harness here at Archives about that. If you meet that criteria, then you are eligible for some National Park Service grants. Please check that out and apply for those. Wanting to find some foundation funds out there, one of the best places to look is the state library. They have a fantastic website. They do some demos and webinars about how you can find funding from some of those uh, different foundations out there. And we still have recorded our Meet the Funders event, where we pulled together Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, Archives and History. We had someone from the Berkeley there. We had Arts Commission and the Humanities all came together at Old Santee Canal Park last year. And while the dates on those will change and there's to be some few differences, it's a great way to kind of become familiar with other programs that are out there. So I encourage you to watch those webinars and see if something might fit with some other program might fit with you all. And again, just a reminder that we'll have recordings on our webinars page. We'll have 101 appointments with me on Tuesdays and Thursdays available soon. So check that out. And remember that we are here to help our entire team. So I need to add Tyler on there. He is hosting us today. But Bill Davies, Mike Tyler, Molly Fortune, myself, Heather Hawkins, we thank you all for what you do. And again, thank you, Tyler, for hosting. And we should be ready for Q&A very soon.